In the last few lessons, we've taken a look at freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of religion. And now we're going to combine the final two First Amendment rights, association and assembly. And they often do go together. We're going to take a look again at a few cases. You've already looked at the case, National Socialist Party versus Skokie. And so we're going to start off with freedom of association, which really isn't Skokie appropriate directly, but we're talking about groups. Freedom of association allows people the right to form or join any groups without government interference. And so it allows some groups that you'd be surprised to know even existed. For example, when I first voted for president, I was surprised to see that the American Communist Party had a candidate, in part because I didn't know there was an American Communist Party, but there is, and the government can't do anything about it. Through the years, other groups that have been controversial have existed without government interference because of the freedom of association. Some of these groups the public looks on with disgust, like the Ku Klux Klan or the National Socialist Party of America, like in the Skokie, Illinois case. The Black Panthers and the Weathermen that were considered militant radical groups in the 1960s. But it all comes back to the idea that our founding fathers wanted to provide that ability to exist for these organizations because that's where our country was born, from revolution, from groups like this that many people in the public would have not liked and wished that could have been stopped from gathering, but yet they were allowed to exist. So freedom of association. Now, freedom of assembly means that people have the right to peacefully gather. Whether it's to protest something or to lobby the government or any other organization, they're allowed to peacefully gather. And so that was what the Skokie case was about. And, what it brings us to is the idea that you do have the right to gather. Okay, but we're actually going to come back to when the government can and can't restrict it after we talk about Skokie a little bit. So let's look at this case. And, basically you have an American Nazi party, in essence, which existed in the 1970s, and they targeted, first of all, Chicago as a marching place where they wanted to gather. Chicago came up with ways to kind of basically prevent them from assembling, and so they targeted a city that they knew would be very controversial, Skokie, Illinois, which was the home of many Holocaust survivors, not just Jewish people, but people who actually survived the Holocaust, the concentration camps, lost family members. And so they knew that this would be kind of a boiling point type of town. And they challenged Skokie's attempted refusal, along with the city of Chicago's, to allow them to assemble by taking their case to the court. And the issue became, can the government deny freedom of assembly if the group's message might offend some members of society? And as distasteful as the message of that group might be, the court obviously found in favor of the National Socialist Party and set the precedent that the government can't deny the right to assembly, and this has been interpreted to also mean the right to associate, simply because they disagree with the message. And so, up above in your Lesson 5 graphic organizer, it says, that the government can't restrict because they disagree with the message. That is, the answer to that. The government can't restrict because they disagree. So you could have, the National Socialist Party. You could have the Ku Klux Klan. The reason we do this is because if we start to pick on groups like that even, the large majority of Americans would say that's okay to restrict them. That's okay to not let them assemble. The problem is it becomes a slippery slope. Because then what if we have a Republican majority in this nation who feels it's okay to deny Democrats the right to assemble? Or, we have a specific church that wants to, that other churches and other people would like to see denied the right to assemble. And so, unfortunately, we kind of have to take the good with the bad. Now, government can restrict based on time, place, and manner. And I'm going to kind of use this rally, or the idea, let's go with the KKK rally. Which the KKK sues a city for the right to march and have an assembly at the county courthouse. And, the government can't deny them the ability or deny them the permits to march based on disagreement with the message. However, they can restrict time, place, and manner. So they can say, As for the time, they could say this assembly has to take place outside of the courthouse hours. So it would have to take place after 5 o'clock, let's say. But even that restriction can't be overly restrictive. You can't say that, the city can't say that you have a window from 1 to 3 a.m. To assemble. So that would be taking it too far. As far as the place, the KKK can be told, the assembly has to take place in the courthouse square. It can't spill onto the streets and stop traffic. Again, that restriction has to be relatively reasonable. And then the manner could be something like limiting the volume of the PA system during the rally. So, those are situations where the government can restrict, but we know the main point out of the Skokie case is that the government cannot restrict because they disagree with the message. Now, the next case you're going to look at, Hurley versus the Irish American Gay, Lesbian, and Bisexual Group, deals with Boston's St. Patrick's Day parade. So you're going to take a look at that case, and then I'll come back and give you a little summary of the whole precedent here at the end.